who's taking over that position. She was in charge of the, I guess what you'd call public relations. So she asked if I'd do this, and I sort of, very happy to do it because I don't like the fact that there's people, and I'm not picking on you. I don't like the fact that there's people who could theoretically decide they're going to do our shiur in this building on this. But what I do like is I know of about 10 or 12 former students who listen every day. So that's amazing. They're sitting in wherever they are, driving to work, and they're driving to work and they put it on. So that's great.
I think more classes should be recorded.
I think they all should be recorded. There should be, in every room, there should be a camera in the ceiling. The teacher doesn't have to do it. Maybe there's a little shalat. All he has to do is press a shalat, starts taping at the end. Then there's someone whose job it is to take all that stuff, put it up online. There's 15 million Jews in the world that theoretically could look at that class. Why we are not taking advantage of that technology, I don't understand. Just don't get it. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
We'd have more students on that than we have sitting here. Obviously, that's better here, but I don't get it.
If you call phone Rabbi Kaplan's Q&As, I know Rabbi Breitowitz's Q&As are also get really good, we get really high views.
His class in the girls' school is done.
Yeah.
I think.
He's a little more hesitant about recording.
What happened? What happened? His class in the girls.
No, we're talking about it being online.
Oh.
They do that.
That age as well.
There's a few classes in the women's school that are online.
Yeah.
I don't think there's very much from here. This might be the only one.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Oh, I hope.
Anyway, okay. Let's go. The Rebbe is now explaining to us how do we do it? Right? After everything we learned that our Veda affects the Eibishter. And we learned that Veda is Av and Yira. And we learned the difference between Av and Yira. And I might even ask you about that, but not right now. And then, now the Rebbe is explaining, okay, so how do we do it? And how do we do it? So we learn that from our psukim also. It says, Leisa mishakela v'akara b'artzecha. Don't be a mishakela or a kara. What's an akara? So the Rebbe told us what's an akara. An akara is someone who doesn't give birth to children. What does that mean in a Veda? No love and fear. Doesn't give birth to love and fear. What's a mishakela? Someone who did, but that didn't last. It wasn't real. Okay, it would be your inyan. Right, top of page 330. Right, first line. Beer in it. Ba'akara she'ena yeledus. The Rebbe's talking in Gashmis. A barren woman who can't give birth. Yesh beis bechinos. There's two different qualities, two different levels of that. Bechina mishayna, bechina aleph. Shafilu beis vlad, a house of child. Beis matron, a house of motherhood, which you would probably call, in terms of physical parts of the woman's body, a uterus. Ein la. Hainu, what does that mean? She'ein la kli kibul, she doesn't have the vessel to accept l'kabel ha'hariyon, pregnancy. She can't get pregnant because she has a certain physical issue that doesn't allow her to become pregnant. L'tzorach ha'leida. Right now, there's other people who physically are fine, but for whatever reason have a hard time actually getting pregnant. Okay, and giving birth to children. So what's the first in a Veda? It's a hard one to figure out how to deal with. Vinyane ba'Veda, shebeis vlad kai al hispailus sichlis. Hispailus is ecstasy, excitement, hitpa'alut. The Mittler Rebbe wrote a kuntras hispailus. It's generally translated as the tractate on ecstasy. Shebeis vlad kai al hispailus is intellectual excitement. She'al yoda tia hiladas amidas bizgalis libe. That through it, they'll be giving birth to the midas, love and fear, bizgalis libe, in a revealed way in his heart. Keep reading, then we'll talk about it. Vakara, and an akara, she'ein la beis vlad, and an akara that doesn't have we're talking, that's in Gashmi, it's the physical apparati necessary to give birth. What's that in Ruchnius? Perushe. Shaloizu bilvad, not only she'ein loy ava v'yira b'izgalas libay, not only does he not have love and fear in a revealed way in his heart, shezeo inyan timtum halev, a person who's in that state is in a state of timtum halev. Timtum means to be stopped up. So the heart is stopped up. The heart is all blocked. That's someone who doesn't have love and fear. But that's not what we're talking about here. This is worse. Right? Elo she'ein lo yafilu hispailu sichlis. He doesn't even have intellectual excitement. Shezeu in timtum hamayach. That's when the head is blocked up. The brain is blocked. Now, what's hispailu sichlis? So we also have to understand how this all works, which we will. We'll talk about it. What's hispailu excitement? Excitement about what? Excitement about an idea, about a Kadosh Baruch Hu. There are people who, and this is very, very hard to take care of, meaning this is a much more serious situation for the person to be in than the case of Timtum Alev. Timtum Alev, that is something that most people that we know experience. They might get excited about ideas about Elokus, but they have a hard time bringing it down into their heart and actually, making that part of their emotional reality. Timtum Hamayach is a person just doesn't find ideas about Elokus interesting or exciting. Right? So they might force themselves to do it, but they're just not particularly interested. Right? And if that's the case, then the person, no one is, I'm going to say a word, no one is ever in this state completely, but temporarily a person could be in what would be called a hopeless state. It's hopeless. If they don't deal with this, it's hopeless. Timtum Hamayach is they don't find the Eibishter interesting. They aren't particularly interested in learning about the Eibishter. Right? Like, why? I don't understand. Tell me something about myself and my Nefesh Bahamis? Maybe. The Eibishter? Well, what for? Right? Oh, so obviously a person who's in that state of non-mind will have it'll be impossible for that person to arouse a love or fear of God because they're just not interested in the Eibishter, even intellectually, which is easier than emotionally, because we tend to be intellectual beings. That doesn't mean we're all intellectuals. Intellectuals is a certain type of human being. There's human beings who are intellectuals, there's human beings who work other ways, but every single one of us has intellect and we work through intellect. We think about things. So what do we think about? Last thing the person will ever think about is God. Might think about himself relative to his own spirituality. Say to right? God just distracts me from thinking about myself. The Rebbe is going to tell us why it is that a person will be in that place. Right? So that's a pretty difficult place to be in. Hispailu sichlis. Now, how does that all work? Right? How do we work? So we work, we learn Tanya, we've all learned Tanya, and we know that we work starting from intellect down into meters. That intellect thinks about a particular idea. Why? Well, it's just what intellect does. Right? Thinks about a particular idea. And we'll talk about how this works, but first just the generality role. And certain ideas will affect me emotionally. Now, the question is asked in Chassidus at great length. How can it possibly be that intellect has any relationship or influence on emotion? They are two completely different worlds. Right? Intellect is cold, calculated, cool. Emotions are passionate and hot. In you and I, intellect, proper intellect, is about dealing with objective reality. Intellect is all about objective reality. It has nothing to do with me. It's to do with whatever it is I'm thinking about. 2 + 2 is 4. That has nothing to do with me. It's an objective fact. Right? I like it. I don't like it. It's got to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. Right? Completely objective reality. Emotion is by definition subjective. I feel this. Well, you shouldn't. What do you mean I shouldn't? You're right, but I do. Right? Okay. Now, it might be an emotion that I don't think is a proper emotion. I'll do my best to get rid of it, but I can't. You can't say I don't feel that. I do feel that. Okay, fine. That's subjective reality. To say I feel 2 plus 2 is 5, well, okay, fine. You're an American high school student, right? But you'll never learn anything. It's not intellect. It's just complete and total abandonment of intellect for the sake of emotion. Because what's emotion? Subjective me. So now that, the world's going there and it's going to run into a dead end, right? But okay, there's still people who ultimately believe in something called objective reality, right? Okay, and that's intellect. That's what intellect's all about, is objective reality, right? In base 5 and up, 2 plus 2 is 4. There's nothing to talk about. It has nothing to do with me. It's not a subjective reality. It's an objective reality. I like Amnon. That's a subjective reality. Okay. So how do the two have anything to do with each other? Well, the reason they have something to do with each other is actually quite fascinating. That's these pilus sichlis that the Rebbe is talking about. The Rebbe just said, the person who's completely barren, but again, the first level of barrenness is I don't even have the physical apparatus to give birth, as none of us in this room do, right? Okay, so that means we can't give birth. What's that in Ruchnias? Now, we're talking about a woman in the same situation. Okay, what is that in Ruchnias? A lack of spiritual excitement about the Eibishter, such that obviously they're not going to give birth to love and fear. So how does it work? There's what's called meichin and there's what's called midos. Right? Meichin is intellect, midos are emotional attributes. But we know that just like all 7 spheres are incorporated in each other, all 10 spheres are incorporated in each other. So in other words, you and I can talk about meichin, we can talk about midos, we can also talk about midos shebemeichin, the emotion of intellect, and meichin shebemidos, the intellect of emotion. So how does it work? A person thinks about a particular idea. They might experience his pilus sichlis, which is midos shebemeichin, the emotion of the thought. What does that mean? Gets excited about the thought. That's an emotion. Gets excited about it. Finds this a fascinating idea. Goes, wow, that's amazing. Oh, okay. What has he now done? He's now brought about a possibility of these two completely different worlds having something to do with each other, because once there's now a reality of meichin, of midos shebemeichin, intellectual excitement. So that might give birth to midos in emotion itself. But what's the conduit that connects midos to meichin? Meichin to midos, from the top down. Meichin shebemidos. What's meichin shebemidos? The intellect of the emotion. What's that? Well, there's 2 different levels. The Nefesh Elokis is essentially intellectual. It has midos though. It can love and fear, we know that. But it's essentially interested in objective reality, right? It's not interested in itself. It's midos, how it feels. It's interested in objective reality. God's big. They love God. That part of us loves God. But that love is an expression of this incredibly powerful objective appreciation of the greatness of God. Okay. The Nefesh Bahamis is essentially midos. Me, how I feel, my experience of self. Okay, does it have an intellect? Absolutely, very sophisticated intellect. But the essential expression of the Nefesh Bahamis is midos. Okay. But even the midos of the Nefesh Bahamis, there's 2 different levels of what we call the seichel of the Nefesh Bahamis. There's human intellect, which is very unique. And then there's the seichel of the midos of the Nefesh Bahamis. Hard to understand. What does that mean? What do you mean seichel of midos? Okay, so what is it that causes me to make a decision that I want to connect to something? Because midos is all about connection. What part of me is making that decision? The midos of my Nefesh Bahamis. But again, when you say the midos of the Nefesh Bahamis, the seichel of the nefesh habahamis. When you say that, you mean the seichel of the midos of the nefesh habahamis, not human intellect itself. What's an example of that? And it makes it very simple to understand. How do animals make decisions? Do animals have what you and I call seichel? No. Animals can't do math problems. Animals can't learn chassidus. But they have seichel. There's some level of seichel that animals have. Anybody who's ever had any relationship with an animal knows animals have some level of intellectual activity. Can teach the dog how to scratch at the door when he wants to go outside. Right? There's no problem. Right? Gets all excited as soon as you walk to the closet where his leash is. He starts going mishakela. Right? Obviously, he knows what's going on. Right? He'll climb up on the window in the living room and scratch at the window so you can see him. So he'll open the door because he wants to come back in. He does all this. The fox makes a decision as how it is he's going to get into the chicken coop to eat the chickens. So where's that? What is all that? So that isn't what you and I call what the intellect of the nefesh habahamis, the nefesh hamaskelis, the rational soul. That's not that, right? Because only you and I have that. Animals don't have what you and I have. They don't have intellect the way you and I have intellect. Okay, but they do have intellect. What is that? That's the intellect of the nefesh habahamis. That means the intellect of the midos, because they're all midos. That's all they are, right? Okay, so they have an intellect of those midos. In other words, they can come to a decision, shezeh tov li, and act upon it. That's about what they can do. Zeh tov li. This is good for me. What's good for me? Scratch at the door is good for me because I want to go outside. It's much better for me to do what I need to do outside than inside. If I do it inside, I'm going to get a whack and they're going to put my nose in it, they're going to throw me out the door, and I don't want to do that. I did that for a while. I figured this all out, but I don't like that. I didn't like it when they did it to me. Didn't take long. He figured it out. He waddles over there and he scratches the door, barks, whatever he does. Right? Okay. So he figured that out. Why did he figure that out? He said, Tovli. Right? He knows that. So there's a part of midos that is the intellect of midos. It's not intellect. It's not math problems. It's not learning chassidus. But it's the intellect that can appreciate what is good for me such that I want a connection to that. So it's the intellect that directly powers my midos. And that's called meichin shebamidos. Then we'll go back up. There's also a midos shebemeichin. That's what the Rebbe just talked about. That's called the ispailu sichus. Without those two intermediaries, meichin and midos can have nothing to do with each other. But what allows meichin and midos to have something to do with each other? Because there's something called midos shebemeichin. That's the ispailu sichus that the Rebbe just talked about. The fertile ground that allows for the birth of love and fear, like the uterus, right? If there's not there, right? The Rebbe said the woman, the akara rishona, the akara that we're talking about, has no uterus. What does that mean? There's no ispailu sichlis. What does that mean? There's no fertile ground to give birth to love and fear. Someone who does not find learning about God interesting will never love him or fear him. He's not interested in God. Why? Well, the Rebbe's going to explain to us why. Right? Okay. Makes sense. Right? But what is that? That's the fertile ground where I could be impregnated to give birth to children, love and fear. But if that's not there, that can't happen. But how does that happen? That happens not straight into the Rebbe's not talking about this aspect of it in this mimer, but the next step in the process is meichin shebamidos, to come to the emotional decision, so to speak, which is a ridiculous thing to say, but okay, emotions decide. Animals decide. But you wouldn't call it intellect. Well, sort of intellect. Well, it is intellect. It's meichin shebamidos. What animal? The intellect level of the intellect that animals have. Zeh tov li. This is good for me. I want this. I want to be connected to it. Animals make those decisions. Animals will make a decision. I don't want to be connected to this guy. There's some guy who comes over. Every time he comes over to your house, he kicks your dog. God forbid. Your dog is going to walk away. Every time he sees him, he's going to walk away, right? He's probably going to whimper away. And he's going to whimper away. Okay, why? Because he's not an idiot. He knows he doesn't want to be near this guy. Zeh tovli. He figures that out. But it's all midos. because it's all about me and my subjective state. Okay. But that isn't necessarily bad because those midas could be expressed in a very positive way. So in you and I, they can be expressed in love and fear of God. But how do we get there? Meichin, midas sheba meichin, which is hispilus sichlis, the intellectual excitement the Rebbe is just talking about. Meichin sheba midas, the decision in midas shezet toiv li, and then the midah connection. Now, in you and I, because our nefesh habahamis is the way it is, and our midas are the way they are, we can even make this decision not zet toiv li, but zet toiv. Even in the midas, even in our midas, because our midas come from a place that can be elevated to kedusha. It's not klipa, it's not complete klipa. It's not from klipas tameas. Our midas, it's from klipas nega. So klipas nega could come to the decision that zet toiv. Neto has nothing to do with me. Zetay. Right? No other creature can. Every other creature, the decision is going to be Zetay li. Now, most of the time we do it at Zetay li. So it's not that they're all horrible people. It's just that there's a difference between a yid and a non-yid. Right? Okay. And the difference is the yid could actually make the decision Zetay in his nefesh habahamis, in the midas of his nefesh habahamis. Zetay. And therefore he wants to be connected to it because it's good. Good for me? Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, if it's toiv for me too. But I mean, that wasn't the impetus, right? But generally, the simple pshat in the way that nefesh habahamis works is that toiv li. Animals do it, and humans do it. In that sense, humans are similar to animals, right? Okay, give a human a chocolate pudding, he'll probably say, "Oh, zetov. Oh, I like this. Zetov li. I like this." He'll say zetov. He won't say zetov li, but really what he means is, "Oh, I like this. This is good. I like this. This is good." And the next time he walks into the same room, guess what? He might pick up another one, right? Because he liked that. Okay. What's the difference between him and a dog? Feed the chocolate pudding to a dog. What's he going to do next time he comes in the room when he sees a chocolate pudding? He's going to want a chocolate pudding, right? That's what he's going to want. What's the difference?
Dogs are allergic to chocolate.
They're allergic to chocolate?
Yeah.
All dogs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
So maybe they're probably not.
Okay, so maybe he won't want a chocolate pudding. He'll probably eat it anyway and get sick because he's a dog and he's a dummy. They're cute, but they're dumb.
I don't think there's much chocolate in the chocolate pudding.
Enough to get people to eat it. Okay. So that's the first level of akara. So now the Rebbe gets a little heavy. So buckle up, don't fall asleep. Yeah. So Rebbe now explains why. How could it possibly be that I'm in a situation where I don't find God interesting? And there are people like that, right? There are people who just don't find learning Chassidus particularly interesting, unless it's talking about them. Their nefesh habahamis, their avodah, how they work. That part of Chassidus they like. It's talking about me, they're into it. As soon as it starts talking about levels of godly reality, down goes the shades. Why? What's this got to do with me? Well, who says it has something to do with you? I don't understand. Why does it have something to do with you? Why can't it have something to do with God? Well, not interested. I'm not there. I'm not reading it. Well, where does that come from? Now that's going to cause it's going to be the source of a reality where the person is not going to be able at that point in their life come to a love or fear of God. It's not going to happen. Why? Well, they're not interested in God. They're interested in themselves. They might love what their relationship with God does for them. They like how it gives their life structure and it gives their life meaning, and they really enjoy what mitzvahs are about, and they really enjoy trying to experience spiritual upliftedness, and maybe they even think they do experience spiritual upliftedness. Maybe they do, I have no idea. Right? Okay? All sorts of things. But please, let's not pretend that God has anything to do with that. He's the prop that might be part of that whole reality, but this isn't about serving him. This is about serving me. But this is the way I do it. And is the person doing bad stuff? He's doing great stuff. Okay. could be doing so much worse. It's not that we can't even talk about it. On the other hand, what is there a relationship yet? No. So we know that starts with Kabbalah Zohar. Right? We learned about that in this month. That might not be there yet. They might not be particularly interested in the Eibishter. How do you know? Well, if you were to talk to him about the Eibishter, he shuts off. Talk to him about himself and his religiosity and his spiritual growth. He's listening, every word. Tony Robbins, he's in. Right? What?
Where's Joseph? That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, I'm glad I said it when he wasn't here. Right? Tony, right? I'm in. Why? It's about me. Not that it's bad. He does good stuff. He saves people's lives. But what if he were all of a sudden to do a 3-day seminar and doesn't mention once a human being? All he talks about is God. I would think the numbers will go down. Right? Okay. What's Rabbi Vichen always like saying? Ask someone to talk about themselves, they'll go on and on and on and on. Ask them to talk about God, they'll, after 2 minutes, they won't have anything else to say. He created the world. Okay, what else? He's big, He's kind. Well, not always. Well, he is, but we don't understand. Okay, now what? How about Sevid Mamale? Yichudi Lo, Yichudi Tato, Ak, Tzimtzum Rishon, Orein Soif, Lifnei Tzimtzum, Achrei Tzimtzum, right? Kav, Rishima. What about all that? What does that got to do with me? Well, I don't understand. That's how you came into being. It's the only reason you are is because of all that stuff. But I mean, that's not why you necessarily have to learn about it. You learn about it because, it's God, right? That Moshe we once brought about, would you read an article in a magazine about your wife and you're not mentioned? Some people wouldn't. Why? Because they don't love their wives. They don't love her. They get along with her, but they don't love her. They don't really care about her. Well, if they care, they wouldn't read the article? I don't understand. Of course they read it. If you love your wife, you wouldn't want to read an article about her in the... but you're not in the article. So what? It's your wife. Right? If you love her, you'll read the article. If you don't love her, you won't read the article. Someone else's wife, you don't know her, why should I read the article? What's it got to do with me? Some woman who works in some bank in Peoria, Illinois, and there's some interesting story about it. Not particularly. And maybe I'll read it because the interesting part of the story might affect my life. Okay, so maybe I'll read it. But I couldn't kill her. If it was my wife, I'll read it. Even though I'm not there, there's no picture of me in the article. I looked for my name isn't there. Read the article. Why? She's mine. Okay, what if there's an article about God and you're not there? It's called Haskola in Chassidus. Right? You learn about Atik and Arich and levels above. I'm not there. Okay? Do I care? Well, if I have a relationship with God, I do, because he's my God. If not, so then what's this got to do with me? And people say that, and it's a reasonable question at a certain point in a person's life. At a certain point, they can be challenged to get beyond that. Person walks into Mayanot, what's he interested in? Levels of godly reality that have nothing to do with the world. He's like, what are you talking about? What's that got to... I didn't come here for that. Well, he did. He just doesn't know it yet. It'll just take a while until he figures it out. That maybe it's got to do with God as opposed to my religious journey, my spiritual journey. Okay. So now, why is it that a person might not be excited about godly ideas? So I'm sorry, the Rebbe gets heavy here. I apologize, but it's the way it goes. He doesn't, sixth line. Vasiba lazeh. What's the reason? Hu mipnei she'ena kli kibul. What do we say this woman's lacking? The kli kibul, the vessel that receives pregnancy, right? Because it's, again, two different levels of akara. A woman who can't give birth because of a physical problem, and the physical problem the Rebbe talked about, which doesn't have what generally we call a uterus, base matron, a place of maternity. She can't get pregnant physically, so she can't give birth. Right? And then we're going to see Timtum Alev. That's called Timtum Ameich. That's relative to Timtum Ameich. Because what's that in a Veda? The person doesn't have any excitement about the Eibishter. What's the excitement about, what's the intellectual, the Sailu Sichlis, the intellectual excitement that one has about that's the fertile ground to give birth to love and fear. But there is no fertile ground. Oh, So now the Rebbe is going back. So what's the reason? Is the person isn't a kli kibul. He doesn't have a vessel to receive anything. Why not? Liyos kli mole, because he's a full vessel. A full vessel, you can't put anything in. It's no longer a receptacle. It's full. Fill the cup full of water. You can't put water in the cup. What does that mean? So the Rebbe is going to explain. Bamidas basav adam, in the reality of flesh and blood, kli male in a machzik. A full vessel can't hold anything. It's full. Dihine. Kasher adamu kli male. When a person is a kli male, what's he full of? The Rebbe says something astounding here. Hainu shu male miratzayna shelo. He's full of his own desires. He's full of his own agenda. His life is about him. Now the Rebbe says an amazing thing here. Loimi boy ritzaynus the Yitzhara. It's not necessary. Loimi boy from Gemara, right? You don't even have to say this. This is obvious. Loimi boy. You don't even have to mention ritzaynus of the Yitzhara. Obviously, he's full of the desires of the Yitzhara, so that he's really got issues. Shehem ritzaynus l'dvarim asurim. That these are the desires for forbidden things. Oyafilu. Even this is also continuous to the loimi boy. You don't even have to say even afilu ritzaynus the nefesh habahamis. Even the desires of the nefesh habahamis l'dvarim mutarim, the things that are mutar. Di'im hayesem dvarim mutarim, that even though they're things that are mutar, harei atayva leim, but the desire for them, he bebechina shade, is like a demon, mishade in Yehudain, al kol panim, from the Jewish demons, right? Tanya. Right? Person's desire for things that are mutar. Still a taiva for Gashmias. It's not Baruch Hashem. It's mutter. Still taiva. So the Alter Rebbe calls that Jewish demons. Oh, but look, afilu ritzaynus the nefesh elokis. Even the ritzaynus of his nefesh elokis, if he's full of the ritzaynus of his nefesh elokis, he's full of himself. Whoa, what does that mean? Hainu ritzaynus the kedusha, desires for kedusha. Keep reading, the Rebbe is going to explain. Hine, imu male va'asuk b'ritzaynus shalei. If he's full and involved in his own desires, and we might say his own agenda, even his spiritual agenda, leimer, to say, shavayda zu yesh lechush ba. This avayda, he has a chush in it. He has a sense of it. He's good at it. It talks to him. Aveda zu reitza, this aveda he wants. Aveda zu eina reitza, this aveda he doesn't want. Why this is in Yiddish, I don't know. I mean, the Rebbe said it in Yiddish, but why it's printed? Di aveda vilil and di aveda vilil nit. This aveda he wants, vil is want, er is he, and di aveda vilil nit he doesn't want. Azayu kli malay she'ena machsi. He's a full vessel that doesn't hold anything. And what does that mean? Now the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Not only does he not have emotional space, because we're not talking about the person with a void emotionally in terms of his love and fear. We're talking about a person with an intellectual issue, because he doesn't get excited about ideas of the Eibishter. Why not? Because he's just too full of himself. He's just so involved in his own self. And that then the Rebbe said very, very clearly, and this is what's heavy about it, even his own spiritual self, even his own Torah and mitzvahs. Not spirituality of Avodah Zarah. Torah and mitzvahs. But he's so involved in his own Torah and mitzvahs and how he's doing and when this and that and this he's good at and this he's not so good at. So what's that got to do with God? So he's just full of that, and there's no room for something. What's there no room for? The Eibishter. There's no room for the Eibishter in his head. He's not going to get excited about godly ideas, because what might happen if you really let yourself, if you go out of the box and allow yourself to truly appreciate godliness, it might have to change. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want this relationship with God to be about the way I want it, not the way He wants it. I like it my way. I do it my way, and it works. Okay. Well, that's not a relationship with God. That's a relationship with me. It's just God's part of it. You have a relationship like that with a person? Let's be friends. Okay. But I just want you to know, my way. What I say goes. I do it my way. We only get together when I want to get together, and we do those things that I want to do. Say them? You want to be my friend? You want a friend like that? It's called a dog. That's what you do with your dog. No problem. You're in charge. He's your master. He's dog. Right? Okay. So your relationship with your dog is on your terms, not his terms. Unless he gets sick, then you're gonna take him to the vet, and you're not so interested. But okay, maybe you'll get the maid to take him to the vet. Right? But you can do that with a dog, or a cat does that with you. Right? Cat's relationship with you will be completely and totally on the cat's timetable. When the cat figures that it would be nice to sit on your lap and have its head scratched so it can purr, and maybe give you some enjoyment from making this animal purr because it's nice because you seem to be making the thing happy. Okay, so the cat will jump on your lap, but if whenever the cat wants, it's like do with you. Okay, fine. So that's how cats are. So a person can be like that with the Eibishter. So the Rebbe says if a person's in this place, so what's really interesting, so the Rebbe says this person also, he won't understand the ideas in Chassidus or in Nigla or in anything else about God clearly. Why? Not that he's not smart, but he's just so full of himself that he keeps hearing himself in every word. So there's no room for the Eibishter to shine through those words. So he'll just turn whatever he's learning into an idea that sits well with him. And if it's not, he won't understand it. That's really astounding. Wow. So it'll affect his ability to understand things intellectually, because what we're talking about right now is intellect. We are not talking about the leiv, we're talking about the meyach. This whole business has been the meyach, timtum meyach, not timtum leiv. The Rebbe doesn't like 3 lines. Right? Timtum meyach, the whole thing is timtum meyach. Right? Wow. And the Rebbe's going to say later, what does the pasuk say? Leise mishakela akada be'artsecha, in your aretz. What's aretz? Aretz is miloshin ratzon. That's what aretz is. Lama, Chazal asked, the Rebbe's going to bring it later in the Mayanot. Lama nikra shma aretz. Why is she called aretz? Shodratza lases ritzoin kaina. She runs, from the word aretz, to do the ratzon, the will, from the language of aretz, the will of her master. What's Eretz Yisrael? Why is it called aretz? It's a place where the will of God is revealed more powerfully than anywhere else. More mitzvahs here than anywhere else. Right? Okay. So aretz is ratzon. So that's the end of the post. Why is it that I might be an akara, I might be a mishakela? Is because I have my own agenda. And my agenda will include God, but it's not his agenda. If it's not his agenda, so then that love and fear is not happening. Because I'm too full of love and fear. Of whom? Me. Right? I'm full of myself, so I don't have room for him. That doesn't mean I'm a horrible, terrible, disgusting person. But I'm not going to get anywhere in Avodah. Right? The Rebbe's not saying this is a terrible person. This person is a wonderful person. Right? But there's just a lot of me there. Well, okay, we all experience that. It's just always so surprising when the Rabbeim who don't experience it explain it to us in such a way that we wouldn't understand if they didn't explain it to us, even though they're explaining an experience that they don't have, but we do. Such that there will be intellectual excitement. Why is he not going to get excited about this idea? Because this idea is too challenging. It's going to make me change. It's going to get me out of myself. I don't want that. All right? Find me the books that agree with me already. I'll read them. All right? I want the books that agree with me. I want my way. What's God's way? I want my way. All right? Wow. It's heavy. This mimer gets heavy. I'm sorry. It gets heavy.
Heavy stuff.
Well, it's evidently necessary. It's not depressing. I mean, it can be depressing if a person's all about himself. He'll hear this and he'll get all depressed about himself. Okay, fine, great, good. Just did exactly the same thing that the mimer was talking about. It's all about me. It's all about how terrible I am, and oh, woe is me. And I don't want to learn this stuff because it makes me depressed. Okay, great, good. Go to take a kite and go to gun soccer and fly kites, and you're all good.
Heavy doesn't necessarily mean depressing.
If you're a healthy person, it doesn't. If you're an unhealthy person, it does, because you will immediately decide that this is saying I'm not good, and that destroys them. 100%. That's the problem.
Wait, what does it mean depressing? What does it mean?
Josh said that heavy does not necessarily mean depressing. That's true if you're a healthy person, but an unhealthy person will immediately translate it into I'm no good and start feeling bad about themselves. That isn't what the Rebbe is saying. The Rebbe is saying you can be better, and if you're not, this is the reason. Okay, so be aware of the reason and fix it. If you go to a doctor and he says, oh, the reason your knees hurt is because you have a little problem with the ligament there. Okay. I have a problem with my ligament. Oh, I'm a terrible person. I have a problem with my ligament. Oh my gosh. You go home and you cry and it's terrible and you're depressed. You moron, just go fix your ligament. I mean, I understand, what's the problem? So a doctor just told you have a problem and there's a way to fix it. Just go fix it. Now, aren't you happy you now know the problem, right? With your knee, aren't you happy? My knee's been bothering me. Now you go to a doctor and says, oh, it's no big deal. Just do here's some exercise. You do this, it'll probably strengthen it. It'll stop hurting in a week. You go home all upset. Oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. No, you just go fix your ligament. Right? Okay. If you have any discipline whatsoever, which some of us don't, and so some of us won't do the exercises he talks about, and we'll just put up with having a sore knee for a while. Right? Okay, Beseder. At some point, we'll start doing the exercises, either right away or later. If we're dumb, it'll take a while. If we're smarter, we'll say, well, let's give it a try. And sure enough, probably a week later, it'll stop hurting because it'll strengthen the things around, and you won't fly. So what about Ruchnius? Same thing. Except that's just closer to me. My knee is my knee. It's not me. It's my knee. Right? Whereas you talk about me, like panini is me, I start getting nervous. Like, whoa, hold on. Let's not get so personal here. God's pretty personal. Right? I think most people knew it was somewhere. Most people are happy that God's a personal God. They think that's a cool thing, that God actually knows who I am. Okay, but if he's a personal God, that means that you have to have a personal relationship with him. It's not a one-way street. Yes, he takes care of you, but what about you and him? What gets in the way? Me. Was that my agenda? My agenda in Gashmias, my agenda in and the Rebbe said, obviously agenda in Nefesh Abahamis Mitzad Yetzer Hara, that's a disaster. Even the agenda of the Nefesh Abahamis regarding things that are mutter, so that's also, right? Persons by Baruch Aleinu is already, not even pretending to think about davening because he's wondering what's for lunch. Okay, Beseder. So that's not exactly where I want to be, right? But at least, at least the lunch is kosher food. Right, Beseder. But the Rebbe said, I love it. But really, even the ritzainus of the Nefesh Elokis, wow, unbelievable. What does that mean? This avodah I like, and this avodah I'm not so good at, so I'll do this. I'm not so good at this. Gemara doesn't speak to me. Who cares whether Gemara speaks to you? You're a Jewish man, and you have a mitzvah to learn Torah, so just get it together and put your yashvan in the chair, right? And put your head on the page and figure it out, right? Because it's called a mitzvah zaseh. And if I can't figure it out as well as other people, okay, Beseder. But at some point, and if I don't get to the point where I can figure it out, okay, so I'm going to sit with Art Scroll for an hour every day the rest of my life. Fine. Okay. But I'm going to sit down and learn a page of Gemara every day. Why? Well, do you put on tefillin every day? What's the difference? You're a Jewish man. You have a mitzvah zaseh to learn Torah. That's just the way it goes. Like, it's exactly the same as putting on tefillin. No, but tefillin speaks to me. Tefillin speaks to you. So now you just turned tefillin into cappuccino or something. I don't know. Why'd you do that to tefillin? So we don't want to do that to our tefillin. We don't want to do that to our learning. There are things that we find easier. There are things that we find harder. Everybody's the same, right? Different than anybody else. There are things that people find certain mitzvahs easier to do and certain mitzvahs that are more difficult to do. Okay? Hopefully they do all of them, right? Most of us don't like fasting on Tisha B'Av. It's not exactly, oh, great, I can't wait till Tisha B'Av. I love fasting. I love fasting and not showering properly for a week. It's just so much fun. I just love this. I love being depressed. Mm-hmm. I'm not supposed to be depressed, but the most, there are people that say like this is the favorite week of the year because now, Judaism is all about pain and they can just get into the pain. Oh, wow. It's hard for them, Tisha B'Av, because they like it so much and they know they're not supposed to. And so there's this, it's a real battle. Right?
In this context, though, they're talking about knowing God and how we need to be doing that.
And I'm not going to do that if I get in the way.
Right.
Oh, this idea makes me feel so good. So that's good. That's hispailu sichlis. But then I also have to do the next step, right? Take it into my heart.
I had that this morning with the Daily Tanya today, where he talks about, without ever talks about how you're supposed to think of yourself as a maggot. And I was like,
What's the chapter? What's the chapter?
29, beginning of 29. He talks about you're supposed to think of yourself as a maggot, and I was like, what? And then I reread the context, and I was like, oh, because he's talking about how you have a heart of stone, you need to break it into pieces, and I was like, okay, it's a great chapter.
Even though we learned we learned the Margafum with the Rava that the Araveda is all on the positive and not in the negative. But yes, I mean it's also true. We're that also. Okay, let's go a little further. So that's Timtum Mayach, which is really amazing. The Rebbe says. The Inyan HaBeis Bakara. What's the second level of Akara? She Yeshla Beis Vlad. She has all. This is a woman in Gashmis. A woman who, she and her husband haven't had a baby for a while. They go to a doctor. They get checked out. Everything's there. Everything's fine. There's no objective reason at this point that they shouldn't be able to give birth, but for whatever reason they're still having a hard time. Okay, there's unfortunately couples who have that issue. But okay, it's not an easy thing to deal with. But that's the second level of akada. The first level is the person gets checked out and is told, they'll be told by the doctor, you can't get pregnant. Why not? Well, there's a limb necessary that doesn't exist. Okay, well, all right, fine. Though a friend of mine with 9 children, the doctors told his wife that. They went to the Rebbe. The Rebbe gave them a bracha for children, and they had 9 children. The doctor said she has a physical problem that will not allow her to give birth. The Rebbe took care of it. I don't know how he took care of it, but there's 9 kids. It wasn't that they were having a hard time conceiving. It was a problem, an objective problem. That first level of akara. I don't know how that works, but the Rebbe took care of it. Okay. What's base? Everything's there, and it doesn't really make sense exactly why it's not working. Okay, so that means there's hispailu sichlis. There's intellectual excitement. The person finds learning about God interesting, looks forward to learning about the Eibishter. Okay, meaning a base bakara. She yeshla base vlad. Elasheni yaledis. She doesn't give birth for whatever reason. Behind she yeshla kli kibu. She has a receptacle. Leido, and this is in Ruchnias. Yesh loi. He has kli kibu, a receptacle. Leido to know lispal b'sichlein, to be excited about godly ideas. Baruch Hashem, he's moved himself to the side that he can actually be excited about an idea about the Eibishter as opposed to only ideas about himself or about his baseball team. But for whatever reason, it doesn't express itself in a revealed way in his heart. That's called Timtum Alev. So now the Rebbe says something amazing. We'll see it. We have 4 minutes. Dehine. Kashem shelitzarcha eloda, the Gashmis, just like in order to give birth in Gashmis, what's necessary? Tzarich lias inyan hazriya. There has to be the planting of a seed. And what's that? So we're not going to get into all this. You'll get into all you'll learn how all this works when you get engaged and then sit down and learn with someone about what Jewish intimacy is all about. Al yedei gilui koyach ein sof. But the seed is coming from the mayach of the Av, and it's a revelation of the koyach of Ein Sof, the power of Ein Sof to give birth. That's the source of that little piece of seed. That's coming from mayach ha'av, the brain of the father, and then ultimately is planted in the mother. And Bezrat Hashem, she's the fertile ground that gives birth. Oh, so that's what we're talking about, right? That's so she's the kli kibul. Kamechein. So too, letzorech hayladas amidas. So too, in order to give birth to midas, tzarich leis inin azriya. There has to be a planting of a seed, or it is a rule of tzaddik, the light that is planted for the tzaddik. Amazing. Dekai, what's that? Al hazriya the Torah mitzvahs, the planting of Torah mitzvahs. Ubal yedei koyach elyon dafkin, comes from a very lofty, transcendent power. What is this? It's based on a mimer, Friedrich Rebbe, Tafshin Gimel. It's down footnote 62. The Rebbe talks about this, a Rosh Hashanah mimer. He says an amazing thing. Shezui, what is this? Hazoza atzmis. Hazoza comes from the root lazuz, which is to move. Hazoza is movement. The essential movement, meaning a person is moved. Right? Meaning, again, like you're moved by something moves you, it changes you, it affects you. The hazoza atzmis, the essential movement, we're shaken up. Shelamayla mitam v'das, that comes from a level beyond intellect. Shetzricha liyos, that because where's the seed planted, so to speak, first in the brain and then it goes to the heart. But there has to be something beyond both that's planted in the brain, that hopefully the brain is a receptacle for it, and then the brain will pass it on to the heart, and the heart's a receptacle, and that's when there's no timtum amarcha, timtum alev. So what is that? So it's Torah and mitzvahs in general, but the Friedrich Rebbe says an amazing thing. The essential shaking up of a person that's beyond tam v'das. Shetzricha liyos l'kol hapachas, it has to be at least pamachas b'shana. Once a year, but Tchila B'ascholas Aveda, the beginning of the Aveda. So now, what's that? Now, this is not what we're learning in this mimer, but what's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? What's Tishrei? Now, we have to open up a little to this, obviously. But what's Tishrei? Tishrei is the Hazoza Atzmis. Tishrei is the Eibishter impregnates us. He plants a seed of love and fear in us. And as we're going to see, the whole year we have to nurture that so it actually gives birth. But it's the essential shaking us up. Now, it might be a person who isn't even shaken up by Tishrei because they're just so completely blocked. Right? That's possible, but that's harder. I mean, most people are affected by Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. They have some feeling of movement in their life. Right? Okay. So that's shaking. What's happening? The Eibishter is planting a seed in us. And what do we have to do? Keep reading. It's unbelievable. After this planting of the seed, then there's the days of pregnancy. What happens? The child grows until it's a viable baby. Until the child ultimately is revealed in the world. The child can't be revealed in the world in the beginning of the whole process. The child is revealed in the world at the end of the whole process. So, in women, human females, that's a 9-month process. What comes out at the end? This little kid with arms, legs, eyes, ears, nose, like this little teeny, weeny toes, the cutest little toes, with like this big. Right? This kid here's got everything. Whoa. Right? What did he start with? He started with a tiny little seed and a tiny little egg, and they met. So it started with the Zriya Milamaila that ends up being planted in the fertile ground below, so to speak. And then that's nurtured until it ends up being a kid who within a year is going to be walking around and, making a balagan. Right? It's like amazing, unbelievable, pashut unbelievable. Okay, so in Ruchnius, how does it start? The Eibishter plants a seed in us. When? Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Shakes us up. And such an amazing image. Shakes us up and plants a little seed of love and fear in us. And then what? If we nurture the seed through Aveda in the Meshech of the years, then we might actually bring about real love and fear in our lives. He does it every year. Right? Every year. Bascholos Aveda. So amazing. Shavlad Heilich v'Gadol Ad Shemizgala B'Aver Olam. And if so, I hate to be personal, but if someone doesn't find that amazing and it's just sort of ho-hum and can barely listen, that's called Timtum Hamayach. Why? Because I'm so hung up in myself. I can't even hear this and go, wow, that's an amazing idea. Because I'm just hung up in myself and I'm just not interested in God. Timtum Hamayach. I hear an idea like this and it's, isn't class over yet? Timtum Hamayach. And what do I have to do? Shake myself up. Really shake myself up. Get a hold of myself. Wait a whoa. The Rebbe can say the most amazing ideas, but it's unbelievable. It's Olympic hockey, no? Let's see. Isn't there Olympic hockey? I wonder did Canada play?
I have no idea.
Let's see. I don't know. Is there?
Let's just hope we don't cheat again.
So I can be sitting in front of God and worrying about curling. Are they still cheating? Right? So where's that coming from? Timtum Hamayach, right? And can we all go there? We can all go there. And when we go there, we better just wake ourselves up and say, whoa, where am I? Right? Okay. Let's just finish. There's 2 lines. Because the Rebbe's then the next line is mishakela. And that gets heavier. Now this is just a heavy mind. It's just it's so interesting. The Rebbe's been Rebbe about a year, right? This is Parshas Mishpatim Tafshin Yud Beis. The Rebbe Yud Shvat Tafshin Yud Aleph was a little more than a year before this. This is Shabbos Varchin Chodesh Adar Tafshin Yud Beis. So the Rebbe became a Rebbe officially a year before. So this is what the Hasidim are being fed right away. Like, whoa. Can't he like ease into it a little bit? No. However, Gam la'achrei shenoldu midas, even after the midas are born, the ava v'yira bizgalas libo, even if a person feels a certain appreciation of the Eibishter and love of the Eibishter and awe, hashlila dakara, which is the negation of being an akara. And remember, we asked in the pasuk, why does it start with mishakela and then go akara? Because the explanation of the Rebbe is obviously starting with akara, because that's what happens first. If you're in a kara, then there's no mishakela, because mishakela means you lose a child, but there wasn't a child to begin with if a person's in a kara. But anyway, for whatever reason, the order in the pasuk is what it is. Tzarech liyos, after a person's already negated the akara and they've done all the hard work to become someone who can actually give birth to love and fear, they've moved themselves to the side a little bit and let God into their life. Tzarech liyos is a hiris, the care, shiye lem kiyum, that they should last, take care of the baby. Hashlila, and that's negating the mishakela. Mishakela is the one who mourns the passing of a child. Shedafka az, the Rebbe is going to explain how to do that. That's the next line. Dafka az, haveda yamitis. Then the aveda is true. Sfas emes tiken la'ad. The true lips literally last forever. In other words, truth lasts forever. Truth is truth, doesn't change. Right? Falsehood changes. Right? Scientific theories. Right? And some of them are true. They've lasted forever. They didn't change. Some of them are not true. Okay, so then 50 years later, we'll figure out in a laboratory that wasn't true. Now we have a new understanding of how it works. Okay, it might be in 50 years they'll realize, no, that one's not true. The ones that are true, well, they don't go anywhere. Right? Okay. Truth lasts. So true love, true fear. Let's quote Shakespeare again. That once was enough. Right? So that'll last. How do I keep it lasting? That's what the Rebbe will hit us with next. Leisa mishakela. Oh, we're talking about God.